We're back with it's been 2 weeks, and 3 main things I worked on this week. Making a zone that you can spawn units in, the little shields that are above every unit's head, a bunch of fixes with them when they're off screen or on different, like on menus, and then playing with UI across the whole app to find a consistent pattern that works. So let's take a look at, we'll just go through each one of them. First, placing units. And then I've also been working with the composer, so some of these tracks are like, this is the, when you're making decisions in the game, this is what you'll hear. So when you're placing units, there's now this green area. It'll look different in the final product, but let me turn this down a smidge. A couple neat things here. So I'm gonna place the archers near this hill, and you see how they're facing that direction. What I have is like right here is a transparent node, and then one here, and then one here, and each node has a rotation. So when you spawn a unit, whatever the closest node's rotation is, that'll be the heading of the unit. I'll eventually allow you to rotate units on your own with your finger, but this is a convenience so that when you put something down, you don't always have to, the game will know, what your best course of action would be, and kind of, especially on the more complex maps, make them face the right direction automatically. And then when we place the second unit, the game will know the beginning. So that's the first thing that actually works. The second is, look at the, actually, before we even go into that, let's just stop that. I want to show you one thing, that just an example of the type of technical pains you might run into. So here is the scene file. For this map. You can see those hidden nodes I was talking about. This is an image. And first I didn't want to use an image, but the shape node in SpriteKit is horrible. It's buggy, people write about it all the time, it's not reliable, so you just can't use the shape node, especially if it's like a polygon, not just a simple shape like a square or circle. So then if I want textures and stuff, I had to make it an image anyway. So this is an image placed on the map, which is good. And then SpriteKit has the ability to give you an alpha mask of that image, which will draw a physics body around it. Great. Now the problem is, physics bodies, you can't run a contains point method on them. So when the unit's placed, you can't check, did they place it in a valid spot. Polygons in SpriteKit do have a contains point though. So ideally, I just get the physics body, get the path returned to me, convert the path to a polygon, and go, does it contain point? Great, works, and it would be dynamic. The problem is, physics body path is not an accessible member you can get through SpriteKit. So what I had to do is find a web tool, put a physics body in it, have that spit out the path, and then in the code, hard code the physics path of that valid point. So from something that could have been something I could do completely through the UI and maybe 3 lines of code, get object, get path, check if point exists, there's just another layer of complexity. These are the kind of things, like when you say game dev is hard, it's more like there's just odd things you don't expect that you have to solve, and they take longer than you think, and they're annoying. Anyway, that's a good example 1 of a technical problem. Technical problem 2 is the next feature that I worked on. Let's look at, so we're going to go into the game again. After the units are placed, look in the top right corner, and you'll see the incoming units, and they have like a progress bar to when they will spawn. So that's new, the progress bar. Also look how they don't overlap. They used to overlap those shields. Also, I'll zoom in a little here and notice none of the shields off screen overlap anymore. They all. So what's happening there? I'm going to pause the game, which is a new feature also. Let's look at. So around the corner of the screen now, there's a bunch of dots. Each dot is spaced the width of a shield apart. When a unit goes off screen, a line is drawn from the center of the screen, finds out where it intersects off screen, then finds the closest dot to that intersection, and that's the place to put the shield. And then there's a true/false flag on each dot of whether or not it's occupied. And this updates every 60 times a second. So you have these dots just constantly keeping track of state, and you try to avoid state when possible because that's how bugs occur. But in this case, it's needed because these shields are what you click on to interact with units, and they can't overlap, or they need to barely overlap when they do. When the unit's visible on screen, there's still some overlapping issues, but off screen now, I could have 60 units and it would fill up around the screen and none of them overlap. So that's a plus. The other thing that I worked on in doing this is I had to make the shields do two things. One is, let's go back to the beginning. One is the down here, the shields are not attached to units. So the code used to have it, a shield would be attached to unit. Now shields are their own thing independent of units that you can create with just counts to show them how many units would be there. This was needed for this screen and the camp screen. And the ability to click a shield used to be bring up the combat controls. Now when you click a shield, in this case it's to place a unit. Now when I click it again, it's to bring up the combat controls. So shields now need, basically they have a set of callbacks where you supply a closure to determine the action. So each scene might supply a different action to a shield click. So that works now. All right, last thing, UI. So it doesn't look, nothing looks great yet, that's clear, but I need to find out where things will kind of lay functionally. So an example is if I always want the settings in the top left to be there, this slide out type thing works because the slide will always come this far out and the settings will always be up there. And let's go ahead and quit this game. The music should have stopped there. Bring back the world map. Click on a map to play. And this works with the settings icon still there. So this slide system kind of works. In the bottom right will always be the main menu navigation, and then note it like these icons will always line up. So I'm kind of trying to establish patterns and fonts and sizes and layouts. If I do something like this forest with a picture, on every screen it should be the same height, consistency across the board. That's step one. And then so if we let's go through the menus here to the hero screen. It works here. Navigation, settings, the same slide where buttons are an icon and then text. Works there. Go to the camp screen. If we click on it, the yellow unit, their information comes up, the same slide panel with the settings and the icons. The color, like the transparency and the colors of the panels are different. I'm trying to establish a look ignore that, but just like the actual usability of things being in the same place, looking the same way, being expected. I'm trying to make that work for every screen. And it works so far, but an example of a problem that exists is the whole point of only overlaying part of the screen and not the whole screen is like, so I can go, I didn't want to click on the yellow unit, I wanted to click on the red unit. And then that only takes one click to toggle units. which is great. If it covered the whole screen, I'd have to put like an X in the top right hand corner, you X out and then click the next unit, which is 2 clicks. Trying to avoid that, but I might have to do that because what happens when the red people are over here, like right there? You can't, there's 2 buttons on top of each other, which is just, it is going to be inconsistent behavior, and that might do more harm than good, but we'll see. Alright, so we got that, and then one last thing to show you. So I've spent a lot of time going through iterations in the UI. A lot of it's more in Photoshop than in the game, but it's along those lines. Last thing to talk about with music is, let's do this battle again. I'm going to place the units. First wave is going to come, and then when the second wave starts, let's just let the first wave come. You'll notice it's going to like transition to rock music to indicate the battle's almost over. And this will usually be like 8 minutes into the game, but I'm trying to go for like a cool effect. There you go. So some sort of indicator like that to say, hey, you're a badass and you're near the end. And with a boss fight, it might be another layer on top of that if a boss is coming out. Alright. That pretty much covers the week progress, and I will hopefully talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks. Bye.